because it is a very big room. My name is Sergejus Muravjovas. I am from Lithuania, from Transparency International. I'll be the facilitator of this discussion, which I think is a wonderful discussion, provided that today is the Anti-Corruption Day. So congratulations to all of us on yet one more Anti-Corruption Day. Congratulations to you, dear colleagues. I think we've made wonderful progress over the past 2 decades, and now every day is an Anti-Corruption Day. I'm sure you would agree. And yet, today we have, I think, a very special panel, because it's not that you get a chance to rethink global approach to corruption by law enforcement with so many distinguished panelists as we have today. We have 1 hour and a half, and we have an opportunity to discuss this matter with my colleague from Lithuania, Žydrūnas Bartkus, who is the Special Investigation Services Director. This is our anti-corruption agency in Lithuania, and also is the president of EPAC and EACN, right? We have Kizo Uglava, who is the acting director of the Ukrainian, and I will be very correct in pronouncing it, in the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, NABU. We have Alice Navarro. Alice is the deputy director of the French Anticorruption Agency, AFA. We have Patrick Killeen, and Patrick is the unit chief of the FBI's International Corruption Unit at FBI headquarters. FBI is USA. Crystal Siitam Niiri, and I believe I pronounced it almost correctly. I have a lot of Estonian friends that would not forgive me. And Crystal is the European prosecutor at the European Public Prosecutor's Office. Very ambitious, new, young institution, which I'm very keen to hear from. And just next to me, we have another fellow Lithuanian, Edvardas Šileris, who is the head of the EUROPOL's European Cybercrime Center. So that was, I hope, the most complicated part of my task today, to be precise and read out all the names correctly. I hope I did more or less all right. Now we go at it head on, and we have 1 hour and 25 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, to answer a couple of essential questions. And that is, why is it that we're here? What is it that we have to rethink, really? I would very much like us to talk about success or lack of it when it comes to law enforcement's role in curbing corruption. I would very much like to rethink jointly together with you how that approach could look in the future. And that is something which we would very much like to do with you. And I'm very happy with the attendance and the turnout that we have here today at 8:30 in the morning on Friday, with more and more people joining us. Because once we tackle some of these questions together with the panelists, we would very much like to open this discussion to all of you. So if you have a question, if you have a thought to share, once we do a couple of rounds of Q&As, please raise your hand, ask for a mic, ask a question, and engage into our discussion. I know that there are a lot of very knowledgeable people in the room, and it would be great if we would come out with a couple of tangible insights at the end of this panel, which all of us can bring at the home or to our institutions that do things on the transnational and international level. So, without any further ado, my first question, dear colleagues, is, you do a lot of great work back home, but I'm sure that every day you are thinking, is it worth it? And whether you're really successful. So if we could first and foremost address this question and talk a little bit about how you understand your anti-corruption success in your particular institutions, what your key performance indicators are, so that you can say that, yes, this year we really have done a better job than last year, and we know what it is that we have to do next year to do even better. Žydrūnai, I'm looking at you. I'd love you to start. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Sergejus. Good morning, everyone. I also would like to congratulate all of you on International Anti-Corruption Day. It's important for our community. And first of all, shortly, what is it Special Investigation Service? Special Investigation Service of Republic of Lithuania is independent anti-corruption agency. Service is investigating corruption crimes, doing corruption prevention and anti-corruption education. So investigation of corruption crimes is one of the biggest part of our activity. And question is, what is success for us? And it's a good question. And I would like to put this success in three different levels: institutional level, national level, and international level. So we should think in three dimensions. For institution, success, I think, is to win case in the court. And scheme could be case and victory in the court. It is the main important thing, and I think it's important because institutions should be strong, qualified, should have a lot of professionals to do that. Another one level is national level, and I think on this level, scheme could be from case to changes. It's a bit wider. It means that we, after each case, we should manage to analyze reasons why this case happened, and to be ready to change laws, to change procedures, to avoid the same situation in future. So, but it depends not only on law enforcement. We should have very effective anti-corruption ecosystem in the country. And finally, international level. International level, I would name that scheme could be cooperation, sharing information, and case. I think only international cooperation between law enforcement from different countries is a way to detect corruption like external threats from countries' national security. Without cooperation, we cannot know what is going on not in our countries, abroad, and what risks from external we have to our national security system. So we should cooperate, we should know each other, we should trust each other, and to work together. So my three main points would be that we should have strong anti-corruption law enforcement, we should have effective anti-corruption ecosystem within the country, and active cooperation on international level.
Thank you so much, Žydrūnai, for setting the tone and the pace of the round of answers that I'm sure we're all expecting of you. And Alice, you're sitting next to Žydrūnas. Obviously, it's only natural that I turn to you. You come from France. Would you agree with Žydrūnas that the number of cases, the number of court cases is something which you can use as a token, an indicator of success?
Not exactly. In France, the Anticorruption Agency is a government body, even if the director has an independence to decide to control. This body may control large private listed entities, and for us, bringing a case to court, a sanctioned court for non-compliance with the anti-corruption program, it's not an offense at that level. It's a failure, because it means that the company haven't understood what were their legal requirements. So even if we can impose some penalties to the company, which anti-corruption plan is not completely deployed, we have in our control, we decide to be more pedagogical, and then sometime when the companies needs to be helped in the deployment of the anti-corruption program, we can give the company a delay, and then we are coming back with a follow-up control. And then if at that time the company understood exactly where we were waiting for them, so we're only happy with that. And maybe I have to say that it's a particular date for us today because it's our birthday. We have been created 6 years ago. Congratulations. Yes. And I think we've done quite a good job. At the beginning, in the 80s, we had only a national service that may carry on awareness raising activities. But after some scandal, of course, OECD strong recommendation, the Parliament adopt a new law, the Sapin law. And then we are quite original system that works. It's based on various actors, but it's not a problem. We have the High Authority for Public Life Transparency. We have the PNF, it's a specialized in prosecutor section, specialized in a financial case. And we have also now a very strong law on whistleblowing protection that is very useful. And we have our agency with a mandatory obligation for company. And then we also had a very important new legal provision. It was the faculty for the prosecutor to deal CGIP. CGIP is a kind of DPA agreement. And we also are the one that may monitor the CGIP. And there are a lot of CGIP, and CGIP also the occasion for the France to cooperate with the other agency. And we are very happy. In a recent case, the Airbus case, there were, of course, the US, the UK, and the French prosecutor deal CGIP and DPA together. And they decide to give to the AFA the sole monitoring of the case. So for us, it's an achievement and a mark that we can trust each other, and we were very, very proud of this. So we also edit guidance, and we had a recent survey. This survey showed that the private companies are quite have a high level of maturity in the comprehension and deployment of anti-corruption plan. So it's quite it's really important for us, even if we also control what we call actors, public actors, like administration or local governments. And they have to progress.
Oh, this is fascinating to hear. So you actually have secondary data that shows, for instance, the progress that companies you deal with make or do not make, which you can then gauge and use as an indicator of your own success. Do I understand you correctly? So I understand that you have surveys of companies, for instance, of how well they implement certain anti-corruption measures, and how they, for instance, instill whistleblower protection into their daily routines, and you use that as an indicator of success.
Exactly, yes. That's very useful.
Great. Well, perfect. Thank you so much. Giza, I turn to you. How pedagogical can you be and are in the Ukrainian setting of today? How do you understand that, yes, we are successful in curbing corruption and in responding to corruption-related challenges in Kiev and elsewhere in Ukraine?
Спасибо за хороший и интересный вопрос. Чтобы понять правильно, что такое для НАБУ успех, надо определиться от его целей. По закону НАБУ – это правоохранительный орган, задача которого есть борьба с коррупцией в высших эшелонах власти.
Thank you so much for the question, and to understand how the NABU can measure success, it is important to start from the very beginning. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine is a law enforcement agency which is investigating top corruption cases in Ukraine.
Исходя из задачи, уже понятно было, что противостояние, давление на институцию в будущем будет очень высокое. Поэтому тогда для руководства самой большой задачей было создать независимую, сильную организацию, которая в своей деятельности будет полностью автономной.
So we understood that the goal is really great, so there will be a lot of pressure from all the sides and the people who are trying to interfere our work. So the main goal from the very beginning was trying to create a completely independent institution.
Поэтому наша самая главная задача была набрать молодых кадров, которые не были причастны к коррупции.
So that from the very beginning we understood that it is important to find a new generation of those professionals who have never been corrupted earlier.
И когда мы в 2015 году начинали работать и регистрировали уголовные дела, кстати, мы зарегистрировали первое уголовное дело 4 декабря 2015 года. Средний возраст моих сотрудников было 25-26 лет.
So when we started to find our new employees, we understood that we want to find young people. So the average age was approximately 25-26 years. And I've just understood that we registered the first case on 4th of December of 2015. So it was...
Для нас задача была большая подключенность к работе НАБУ общественности, международных организаций, потому что мы понимали, что это единственная сила, которая нас будут поддерживать.
We understood that the only people who will support us in our goals are going to be international partners and civil society and NGOs.
Такой подход оправдал, и уже 8-й год НАБУ успешно работает, несмотря на большие попытки давления на НАБУ. 20 раз постарались изменить закон, чтобы сузить наши полномочия или независимость. Но несмотря на это, мы выдержали, и мы более сильнее и сильнее становимся.
So this kind of approach has proven itself, and I know that during all this period of time there were approximately 20 amendments into the law of the NABU where there was tries to make NABU not that independent, to pressure NABU. Though still we are here and we managed to overcome everything.
Институционально НАБУ выдержала и войну. Мы успешно работаем как и в нашем направлении. Мы максимально помогаем военным и спецслужбам бороться против российской агрессии.
And NABU also managed to resist the war because we are working on two fronts. We are working in our anti-corruption direction, and also our employees are helping different services to combat Russian aggression.
Второй индикатор нашего успеха мы считаем борьба с системной коррупцией. Очень часто бывает коррупция, единичные случаи, когда какое-то должностное лицо взял взятку. Да, это тоже коррупция, это тоже плохо, это тоже преступление, но для нас самая главная задача – это бороться с системной коррупцией, в которой подключены разные ветви должностных лиц.
And it is also important for us to understand that the second part of success is fighting against systemic corruption, because there are a lot of cases when different top officials are taking bribes, but these cases are more private than systematic. So those corruption cases where a lot of top officials are involved in the main goal for us.
И третьим индикатором можно назвать, вот в этом борьба с системной коррупцией, я считаю, что подразумевает и тесные отношения с партнерами и с коллегами разных стран и международные контакты, потому что бороться с системной коррупцией без обмена информацией с коллегами, без обмена информацией с другими организациями невозможно.
And I do understand that we are fighting the systemic corruption only with the help of our international partners, because it is impossible to combat it without help and the support of other law enforcement agencies from other countries and jurisdictions.
И третьим индикатором можно назвать для НАБУ это максимальная автоматизация процессов. потому что у нас очень ограниченные штатные ресурсы, которые определены законом, поэтому мы с помощью компьютерных программ, автоматизация процессов максимально стараемся эффективно использовать человеческий ресурс. И последний пример этого наша программа, которая со следующего года уже полностью запустится, это e-case management, когда мы полностью переходим в электронное уголовное дело производства.
And the third point where I think we succeeded is automatizing of the processes, because we understand that the resources of NABU are quite small, and it is written in the law of the NABU. Thus, we are trying to automate everything and to make our employees as well trained as it is possible to use new techniques and tools. And one of the last case is that we are trying to implement e-case management system. So we're trying to digitalize all the materials of criminal cases.
Спасибо.
Well, thank you. Now that we've heard 3 national stories from Lithuania, France and Ukraine, we all know what's coming. We will have our colleagues from other institutions perhaps chip in and share their approaches, their understanding of what success means to them and how they know that they are successful. Patrick, FBI, very big cases. I was reading about Glencore yesterday in the evening. How do you see the FBI's success in the fight against corruption and your attempts to curb corruption? Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, works. Thank you very much. Well, I guess I'll answer that in regards to a two-prong approach, both dealing with specific cases, but also I would just say anti-corruption success from our agency in an overall view. Case-wise, we have to recognize what we can control, what we really have access to, and what we really can achieve. But with each case, what we want to make sure is that we are being as thorough as possible. Have we identified all relevant actors? Have we identified all relevant assets? Have we made all relevant attempts to go after those assets to explore all possible charges with the United States? Also, have we really engaged enough with our partners? I'm sure this is a very common theme and common phrase. We can't do this alone, especially in international corruption. You absolutely need your partners. Otherwise, you're essentially only going to be able to accomplish so much when there is so much more to do. So very often, we look at our cases. Obviously, as an investigator especially, you want to win. You want to investigate a case, you want to indict, you want to freeze assets, and you want to convict. That is the goal of law enforcement. So we do, we strive to be as complete and thorough and more than anything else, cooperative with parties so that we really truly do address a case on a large scale. Glencore is an example where multiple countries were involved. Another significant case that the FBI was involved in was the 1MDB case, which could not have been really accomplished the way it eventually did become without the help of partners. So through that, very diligent work was. I will say though, I would say another measurement is, have we expanded the resources and I would say the expertise of our investigative agency and the U.S. government overall? Is it a success where we really do establish partnerships where we didn't have them before? Establish methods of working with law enforcement, the transmission of information to make it more efficient rather than having to suffer through delays, which very often is a hindrance, or at least I would say a big problem in international investigations because you have to wait when you want to do things as quickly as possible. Statute of limitations come up in various jurisdictions. So have we expanded the resources, the outreach, the expertise of our own investigators? And finally, what I would like to say, we often view this, not just the FBI, I would say the United States government in a much more holistic way. Have we changed the culture? Have we changed the culture of a certain business sector where perhaps corruption Bribery was an accepted form of business, where it was maybe not accepted, but it was certainly just, to borrow a phrase, people looked the other way. They didn't want to get involved. And even, have we changed the culture of a certain region, where corruption was maybe an accepted practice and reality when we all know it shouldn't be? Have we, through both our cases and our partnerships, whether it's doing this or providing training to anti-corruption agencies that we work with, have we helped change a culture so that corruption is no longer accepted? It is no longer the status quo of that business or that region.
Thank you. It's just, I have big fingers. Sometimes they get stuck in. Thank you so much. This is very useful, and that's why I'm very happy that we have Crystal next to you, whom I would very much like to talk to next. And the reason why I'm also very curious to hear what your theory of change is because you come from a rather new institution, a rapidly growing institution. Just yesterday, we were discussing the fact that you grow dozens of people at a time, it seems, right? Your mandate probably is something that you're now getting more and more comfortable with. And just as Patrick spoke about this mutual legal assistance, right, and this cooperation between different agencies, be it national, transnational, you name it, I'm sure you're also facing similar challenges and you have very similar goals. So how does EPPO, the European Public Prosecutor's Office, understand their role in curbing corruption, in making sure that Europe is more transparent?
Thank you very much and good morning, and of course happy Anti-Corruption Day and all those birthdays which we have in different authorities. Well, as already mentioned, I'm an European prosecutor. I come from a brand new office, indeed, from European Public Prosecutor's Office. And since we are indeed a very new actor on the field of criminal justice, then maybe also a couple of words for a background. EPPO, European Public Prosecutor's Office, is an European Union independent prosecutor's office with a jurisdiction in 22 different member states in Europe. Unfortunately, not all EU member states are members of the EPPO, but we do have jurisdiction in 22 countries with a different legal background, and of course this comes with challenges, as you can imagine. But like I mentioned, one of our key principles is that we are independent. We are independent from the national governments. Our prosecutors work solely for the interest of the European Union, and our aim or our goal is that we have to protect the European Union's financial interests, which means in practice that we are competent in investigating and prosecuting crimes which are committed against the European Union budget. Whether it is about fraud committed against EU money, whether it's corruption linked to European money, money laundering, cross-border VAT cases, if the damage is over 10 million euros. So we have quite specific competence, but the key word there is European Union's financial interests. And like I mentioned, we're competent in 22 member states. And we have a central office in Luxembourg, and then on the field, so to say, we have prosecutors also in these 22 countries. We have been operational only for 18 months, so it's also kind of a tiny birthday since it's a very young age still. We became operational on 1st of June last year. So really, if you ask about how do we measure our success, etc., then perhaps it's a bit too early to talk about like real results. But we do have already our first cases in court. We have had our very first, I might say, I'm like tooting my own horn here, but I might say like very impressive operations already. For example, just last week we had a very huge operation where we were investigating a cross-border VAT offense with a damage over 2.2 billion euros. And we just had an action day last week where we carried out searches in 14 member states at the same time. this crime, there are like 9,000 companies linked to this crime, and over 600 people, so it is indeed a huge case. And to keep in mind that we have been only operational for 1.5 years, I think it's already quite impressive. But I think what is also very important for us, or I think it's what we have to do is, I think we have to have wisdom and courage to use the advantages of this new office. Because like I said, we are independent. Our prosecutors don't take orders from any government. No government can tell us what are your priorities. We have only one priority. This is to protect the European Union's financial interest, the money of the European taxpayers, basically. And what is also one of our key principles is even if we're working in 22 different countries with 22 different legal systems, we are a single office. And this is a very, very important principle for us because this means that all the colleagues, all the prosecutors who work now in these 22 countries and in the Luxembourgish central office, they work for the same office, they are colleagues. They can always pick up the phone, call to their colleague, ask very quick cooperation. We have already seen in our short practice that the cross-border cooperation is indeed really, really fast in our cases. And we have the ability now, we have kind of a helicopter view, which we didn't have before in this field in Europe, that we have the ability to connect the dots which were not connected before. And this, for example, this huge operation which was carried out last week was just one of the examples.
Well, great. We'll get back to this in a sec. In any case, good luck. We want you to succeed, I'm sure. That's why it's great that we have you, Edvarde, because you come from a much older institution with many more lessons, stories to share. But at the same time, you come from a particular unit, and you are a person who deals with cyber issues and cryptocurrencies. And because it's all E and algorithm-based, you are a person who deals with what we probably will be dealing more of in the future. So how do you understand that? Well, it's been meaningful. We actually have managed to achieve certain goals, and we're on the road to success.
Thank you. So many good questions. So maybe I will take 1 hour and then we will finish. But actually, prosecutors have shared this story about 2 billion euros, and I am proud that we supported this case as well with extraction from mobile phones and computers. So actually, we don't see any case without evidences right now, and I believe that every one of us can confirm that. So it's new reality, new trend. Also, what is a bit old trend, but it's true. Europol, our mission as Europol is to support EU member states law enforcement entities to fight against serious organized crime. And we have our flagship document. It's called SOCTA, Serious Organized Crime Threat Assessment. And what is interesting there, it's not only about organized crime, but what we see that 60% of organized crime has links to corruption. So actually it's not traditional who sells drugs, but actually it's who bribes, who use influence, who try to escape from justice and all these things. And also on the top we see cryptocurrencies. It's evolving, and in the past it was main means of payment cash. Right now it's transforming to cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies is new trend, and it's really hard for law enforcement to trace properly. And in many cases, it doesn't leave any traces. So we as law enforcement, we must invest in this field, and we must adjust to new reality. And from this, I can link to our name as, for example, name of our panel, or topic of our panel, that rethinking way how to deal with corruption from law enforcement perspective. During opening ceremony, I heard the most common used word was cancer. And everyone named cancer as cancer to society, to transparency, corruption as cancer, of course. And I started to think, so where is our role as law enforcement? So I started to find this analogy that probably law enforcement is some kind of chemotherapy. So it means sometimes painful, sometimes efficient, effective, but not all the time. But for sure, the main thing is prevention, and prevention programs to treat cancer is much more efficient. So unfortunately, we as law enforcement, we are not able to solve all the time all the issues with this strong chemotherapy, but without us it's also impossible. So we need to rethink way how to deal with that. We need to invest to new technologies, new trends. I'm really happy that a colleague from Ukraine invested in digitalization, and in many cases algorithms are really objective, no matter that they are not humans, but actually mathematics is mathematics, and in computers we have ones and zeros, so and it's nothing in between. So yes or no, and sometimes it's not so easy to answer, especially in corruption cases, but we must try at least. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I asked you a couple of questions and you gave a lot of answers. This is absolutely great because it stirs the discussion, and perhaps now that we've made a full circle, we can establish...
And happy birthday as well. So.
Well, thank you so much, likewise. Now that we've made a full circle, perhaps we can agree on where we are, right? Because we have a certain baseline, I suppose you would agree. So we speak about cases, to some of you, the number of cases or the difficulty of cases perhaps is an indicator of your success. To some of you, it's the resilience of your colleagues in the private or the public sector to fight off or resist corruption by themselves, right? To some of you, understand it's the degree and the amount of mutual legal assistance you receive and the fines you manage to impose on companies or other legal entities and non-law-abiding citizens, right, that come into your focus. And I understand that this is something which will be a very good ground for discussion because it's all very different. And it is now. I'm very curious how you see your road going forward, because clearly the world is changing. Some of you are already introducing e-solutions into everyday life, but we all know that e-solutions alone, without the proper groundwork, can mean very little. Lots of new forces emerge. Crime, as Edvardas has pointed out, is truly international. It's transnational, it transcends borders. A lot of national agencies still work within their national confines. And I must admit that sometimes I think that we essentially need to rethink the entire model in which we find ourselves, or which we use to fight corruption, reduce the level of corruption, promote transparency. Žydrūnas, you're probably one of the better people to contemplate on that because you're also the president of this European Partners Against Corruption network. Perhaps you could tell a little bit as to what it is and also what your take on this matter would be, both as the director of, I think, a really powerful national agency, but also this network of various law enforcement organizations.
Thank you. I would like to use this opportunity to discuss a little bit about the importance of cooperation. And after Crystal, your speech about cooperation, I think that it is easy to cooperate when criminal case already started. Because we have subject to discuss about, we have like structure, we have procedures, and now we have European Public Prosecutor's Office. But I would like to step one step back when we have nothing. And this is why networks are important. When we have no information about corruption, how to detect corruption. And I represent European Partners Against Corruption Network in Europe, and what we should do, we should not cooperate in the beginning, we should communicate. We should meet each other, we should build trust, we should build contacts, and etc. And this conference, I think, is a real good opportunity to make new contacts. Why it is necessary? Because without information we cannot start case. We cannot start like procedures and investigate crime, criminal crime, corruption crime in our countries. So, but why networks are important as well? In Europe, I think all over the world, we have a very clear system when we talk about organized crime. We have police in all countries. When we talk about money laundering, we have FIUs. When we talk about customs, state bodyguards, and etc. But when we talk about corruption, we have totally different institutional framework in all countries. And to know your counterpart in another country, it's very, very important to share information, to make contact. Because now it's impossible to know who is investigating crime, for example, in Slovak Republic, in Czech Republic, in Spain, in Lithuania as well, in Latvia, and etc. In other continents, it's impossible to know. So we have like a little bit mass in this area, but this we have and tool, networks. We should networking for making contacts and making networks of law enforcement to share information. And contacts and meetings, not only for cooperation in particular cases, but for sharing knowledge, how we detect corruption. For sharing information, what we have related maybe with your country, is very, very important. And next, already a step is possibilities to investigate. I think we all know what is corruption. Yes, we can imagine that corruption is this or this. But how to deal with corruption? Usually we have different legal framework, different judicial practice, and etc. And I am happy we have EPPO now. And I think maybe 5 or 7 years later, we already will have like possibility to compare judicial practice in Europe and to have discussions or arguments that possibilities to prove corruption in one country is a bit lower than in other. So we will have possibilities to discuss about that. This is my point of view.
Yes, so thank you so much. And perhaps we don't need to now follow the same order. Whenever you feel like you'd like to join us, colleagues, please do. But if I may get back to you, Žydrūnas, just for a second, because I understand you're being very polite and conscious of the time, and you covered the European Partners Against Corruption part, but I would like to get maybe a short answer from you. In 5 years, the Special Investigation Service, what would be successful anti-corruption engagement for you? How different would it be from what we have now?
On national level?
Yes,
I think
on the national level.
We are on the right way. We are building, because the Special Investigation Service is main anti-corruption agency in Lithuania. We not only investigate corruption crimes, but we do corruption prevention. We are responsible for coordination national anti-corruption agenda. So I think effective anti-corruption ecosystem in the country, this is our goal, not only in Lithuania, but in all countries, should be. All institutions, I told about like different institutional framework of law enforcement in other countries, but within the country we have different institutional framework for anti-corruption activity. One institution is investigating, another one is controlling lobbying, controlling conflicts of interest, controlling financing of political parties, and etc. So coordinated activity in this field is must.
Great, so a holistic ecosystem with prevention at the core, just as much as prosecution is now or has been. Great, just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page and we can move forward, because I saw that both Crystal and Alice picked their mics. If that is all right, Alice, we'll give the floor to Crystal, because Žydrūnas mentioned the EPPO, and I saw Crystal's eyes light up. So, because clearly EPPO exists because of the challenges that we still face. Because otherwise, what would you establish? One more new institution, right? Please, go ahead. How do you see yourself in 5 years?
Exactly, and thank you. I completely agree with you, Žydrūnas, and you made a very relevant point here, and I think EPPO, European Public Prosecutor's Office, has indeed a very, very important role here because, like I said, we are the first supranational prosecutor's office having actual powers. We're not like a coordinating agency, but we have actual powers to investigate and prosecute. But just to add another layer to this discussion also, and not to agree with everybody all the time, like, you know, like we're friends, we're cooperating, we sit very closely to each other here. But you know, one more thing which we have experienced within our first 18 months of operation is, how can I put it, professional envy. Is that, you know, we are a really, really new office, which means also that we probably get a little bit more attention. We probably get better resources. If you compare it to maybe some national agencies or already some agencies or EU institutions who have been working in this field for a long time. And also, we have already delivered some results with this new office. For example, we've been always saying, and our the head of office, European Chief Prosecutor, always says that that we are one of the few EU bodies who is actually earning more than we spend.
Could you explain that?
Give us €1, we give you 5 back. Because for the first 1.5 years of our operations, well, our annual budget is around 45 million euros right now. But for within the first 1.5 years, we have seized assets 5 times this amount. And like I said, this has caused a bit of, we have sensed this like tiny bit of this professional envy. And I think it's really, really important that that we, the law enforcement agencies, the judicial authorities in this field, non-governmental sector, we have a common enemy here. I mean, this healthy competition is of course a good thing, you know, like if it makes you work harder and push further, etc. But we do have a common enemy, and we have to sometimes maybe even swallow our pride and step back and also acknowledge other agencies' success and work actually together here. So there is no place for envy here, I think.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal, and I'm happy that you went ahead of Alice because now I can ask, I hope, an even more difficult question, because clearly it's possible to quantify your anti-corruption efforts. Because of the DNA of various agencies, they might do it in a different manner, but how do you quantify your success, Alice? Because, you know, here we have Crystal who says, well, it's more money that, you know, we've managed to get back to taxpayers than what we actually spent on our investigations. You, very insightfully, I think, work on prevention. So then, how do you know that your preventive efforts have actually succeeded?
Well, as I say, we are not prosecutor.
Yes.
So the main question, what you say all both, is the changement of culture. So it's quite hard to quantify, but with our survey, with our control, we spend time with the company. We understand. We talk with the top manager. We understand the way they deploy their anti-corruption plan. So we really feel that there was a change of culture, and but we have no objective indicators. We also, you know, all is question of education. So a part of our resources are aimed to organize awareness raising trainees, and even if we cannot be sure of the results, we have a lot of exchange with university, with professionals, and it's the best way to change the culture and the comprehension of anti-corruption. But we also have a lot of cooperation action, and this cooperation, maybe they are easier because we are not prosecutor. It's the occasion to understand each other and to, for example, understand what do they want in what are the approach of risk management, what is their methodology in risk mapping, and when we understand each other, we know that we can build together and go in the same way.
Sure, this is very useful, thank you, and that's why I would very much like to ask you, Giza, 5 years from now, how different or alike NABU's work on corruption be? Because it cannot stay the same, I assume.
5 лет тому назад НАБУ было всего 2 года.
5 years ago, NABU was only 2 years.
Мы уже взрослые парни, и очень много чего поменялось в работе НАБУ.
I'm pretty sure that we have grown up from that time, and there are a lot of things that have changed.
2 года тому назад нам очень часто упрекали, что где большая рыба, когда вы арестуете большую рыбу.
Several years ago, there were a lot of people who would say to us, "Where's the big fish that you'll find?"
Сегодня уже никто не удивляется, если мы проводим такую операцию, где попадают влиятельные должностные лица или бизнесмены.
And today, there's no surprise, and people are not surprised at all when we find top officials and catch them.
2 года тому назад мы только начинали налаживать отношения с нашими партнерами, нашими коллегами с разных стран. А сегодня уже смело можно сказать, что у нас очень хорошие доверительные отношения с нашими коллегами, и мы проводим общие операции, мы обмениваемся информацией, и в 21 веке, я думаю, в борьбе против организованной преступности, и самое важное, я так считаю, что это обмен информацией между правоохранительными органами.
Several years ago, we were only trying to find ways to different law enforcement agencies and to starting to work with them. Now I can say that we have this kind of cooperation between institutions, between different jurisdictions, and now in 21st century, it is really important to be able to cooperate and to exchange information on different levels.
Я могу это продолжить бесконечно, потому что правда очень поменялась НАБУ за 5 лет.
I can just be endless in my speech because there are a lot of things that has changed from that time.
Well, this is a great cue because I hope that people will be able to approach you after the panel and perhaps ask you questions. And while we're here on this stage, also please do think of the questions that you would like to ask colleagues because we're almost there in this sort of opening part of our discussion. I just want to ask one more thing from these two gentlemen over here, because Edvard, Patrick, it is very difficult to measure impact. It is very difficult to measure impact. It's much easier to talk about outputs, outcomes, and it's not that law enforcement is the only sector that's been relying heavily on outputs and outcomes. I think a lot of our organizations have been doing the same thing, and that is the elephant in the room, right? How to know that we are actually moving forward in curbing corruption, in increasing transparency. Transparency actually is easier to measure, right, in many ways, than the level of corruption. How do you do it at FBI and Europol?
Well,
and how do you see yourself in 5 years?
Retired. No.
Can we ask you where?
No, well, one thing I would say, how you said that there's always quantifiable results to show that you have succeeded or you're moving in the right direction. Obviously, when it comes to management, budgets, funding, that's what they want to hear. They didn't want to hear that, but I have my Rolodex, I have more contacts. But to kind of echo that does truly mean a lot. The ability to have a partner to call when some new evidence comes up from a different country, from a different industry. We've all talked about working with anti-corruption agencies. I would say the FBI is continuing to expand its network to outside of the governmental agencies. Obviously the NGOs is a very big part, But I would say a significant part of what we do also is making us available to whistleblowers, making it easy, making it known for representatives, lawyers, or the individuals themselves to know how to contact us with information. Very often we will get, we receive information saying someone wants to talk to us, but we can't talk to them in a certain country. Or they feel very concerned, what is their personal liability? So the FBI is constantly working with our partners in the United States government to formulate a good process, a quick process, and an understandable process so that we can really exploit, not only can we communicate, can we exploit that information. And one thing I do also want to stress in regards to moving forward and where we want to be in 5 years, we recognize that there has to be constant evaluation. Are we focusing on the right countries? Are we focusing on the right businesses? Very often we may have a great success, and you know, we're humans. We think that, well, let's just keep on focusing on where we've experienced success. But through a constant reevaluation and analysis, we realize that, well, a region or business sector that we haven't really focused on before is actually, there's a significant amount of corruption. And so that's why we're always talking with our partners, but I would say that we're talking with you know, whistleblowers, and even with our international offices in the United States specifically. I'll cite an example. I met with a delegation in the past 6 months. It was an anti-corruption authority. We had a great meeting, but they said, you know what, there's really not a lot of international corruption here, bribery. We haven't seen it. After this meeting, the U.S. official from the embassy came up to me, pulled me aside and said, I get a call every week saying American businesses can't compete because they won't bribe. So you have to constantly communicate with various parties inside and outside of our own government to really evaluate, are we really looking at the right place? Have we focused too many resources in one sector, and where should we be shifting them? Obviously the world is kind of our investigative workspace. With globalization, the United States dollar used very often, and American companies all over the world, we have a very big space to focus on, and we have limited resources no matter how big we get. So the constant evaluation, what I would like to say is in 5 years, the FBI has continued, and I wouldn't say mastered, but has certainly advanced the ability to really be able to focus on the right targets, as the phrase we use, and have we enabled ourselves to be able to shift resources, shift focus, and then when we do that, do we have the contacts, the expertise to contact the right people to make that shift in focus and attention, you know, useful, quick, so we can address situations before they get too bad. I would say that's where our focus is going forward.
Edward, and I'm curious how much organized crime will be in that anti-corruption equation, because you mentioned that clearly we cannot avoid discussing that as well, because a lot of times when we talk just corruption, people think public procurement or conflicts of interest, illicit lobbying, but it's much more than that. It's money laundering, just as we discussed. It's various criminal groups all around the world engaged in activities in corrupting politicians and public servants for their own gain. So in 5 years, how different will Europol be?
I believe it will be huge difference, no matter that we are 20 years old, so it will be only 25, but amount of data will be enormous. And I believe that everyone knows that each year amount of data is doubles. And unfortunately, resources of law enforcement do not double. So because of that, we need to find new, different ways how to deal with this data and how to get these good insights. And I remember during COVID restrictions, actually, we started to think what is objective way how to measure movement. And the most objective data was from Google, actually. When they released this map of phones who are in constant movement, actually you can really objectively say that, for example, it's increasing, it's decreasing. And sometimes we cannot only rely on figures from law enforcement. Because I'm also from Lithuania, and you know we have this small area near the sea called Nida, and I remember one year it was 100% increase of murders in this region, and we asked, so how many? Actually, last year it was 0, this year it was 1, and it's 100% increase. So actually, we need to have a deep understanding about this. We need to find new ways how to deal with that. And the main goal of corruption is money, actually. So follow the money principle should be respected, and we need to have some kind of systematic approach here. And because of that, we need to have transparent regulation. It should be understandable for everyone. And of course, we need to have technical capabilities to do it. Otherwise, it's only illusion. And in many cases, unfortunately, right now, with speed of change of internet and services, sometimes we as law enforcement, we want to state that we are capable, but in fact, sometimes we need to recognize that we are not.
Yes, Crystal, please. And colleagues, now join in. Just raise your hand. Amazing. So we'll just do Crystal first, Alice, and then we go right at you. So please be brief,
yes,
because we do have
really quickly.
Yes,
what I
because
want.
we've already
to,
spent.
yeah.
It's an endless conversation, as Giza said.
Of course. Right? I just use one keyword here to reflect what you just said, Patrick. Trust. This is also how we can measure our success. Is do people trust us? And this is actually one of the goals for the EPPO also, or what we have defined, is that we have to see if people trust us, and if they do, then this is the success.
Awesome. Thank you. Alice.
Just to tell you that next year we will have to adopt our new multi-year anti-corruption plan. Sorry, I can't speak. It will be very interesting to see on what we will focus on all the actors. I spoke about the prosecutor, the High Authority for Transparency, the public actors, the ministry will sit on the same table, and decide, and they will adopt a strategic orientation.
Great, thank you so much. So the key words I'm hearing is greater impunity, right? Oh, actually, no impunity, right? So less impunity. I hear words better and sort of more resources and better comfort when it comes to data and analysis of data. Trust, measured goals, and I really like your constant assessment, right? So that you know where you are. Communication, yes.
I would like to add two remarks. I agree with Crystal that it's not enough to punish. We should return money. This is the main change what we should think about. Not enough to punish public official, but we should create system to return money. Another one, I can understand how easy is fight corruption when political will is. But let's think about countries where anti-corruption agencies, I believe they have no political will, and they should act in their own. So this is a totally different situation.
Thank you so much. I really would like to open the floor. You're absolutely excellent. But you will get a chance to respond. But now I see Inga Springer in the second row. Inga, if you could introduce yourself briefly and also ask a question. The microphone.
So, do you hear me? Hello. I'm investigative reporter Inga Springer from Latvia, and I have a question to Mr. Uglava, because we cooperate with Ukrainian colleagues and with Lithuania especially, and what I've been hearing from them lately is that it's very hard for them to do work on corruption. Also, now they are working on crimes, war crimes, but they can't do on corruption because all these main registries, like land registry, business registry, income declarations, all these databases are closed. So my question would be, don't you consider open them? And if you will answer that it's because of security that Russians might get data, which is very legit reason, but to that my colleague says that in occupied territories they already had access to this data. So anyway, if they would want, they have this data. And you are saying you don't have enough resources, so maybe it would be worse to let journalists to be more involved and also, in a way help in your work. Thank you.
Great question. And what we'll do for the efficiency of time, we'll do something slightly differently. Does anybody else have a question about registries, open data, or questions to Mr. Uglava? Yes, there's a lady over there, yes. So registries, open data, or question to Mr. Uglava? EPPO. So let us give some time to Giza to answer the question of Inga, because it's a very important question. If anybody else wants to jump in, please do. Let's try and be brief, because I see there will be a lot of hands. Go ahead.
Очень хороший вопрос, потому что это очень активно обсуждается в Украине.
That's really a good question because this is actively discussed in Ukraine as well.
Для НАБУ все открыто. Мы все увидим, все смотрим, все контролируем.
NABU has access to all these registers and data, so we can see everything and control.
Но я понимаю ваше беспокойство, что не открыты эти базы, которые были раньше доступны для общества, для неправительственных организаций, которые давала возможность анализировать и выявлять коррупционные риски или коррупционные случаи уже.
But I do understand your concern because those registers and the data which used to be open for civil society and gave an opportunity to check if everything is okay, if there are any corruption risks, they are closed. And we do understand it.
Верховная Рада уже инициировала законопроект, на основе которых будет обновлено декларирование должностных лиц.
As far as I know, there is already in Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, the draft of law is registered where all that information, especially about when it comes to declaration, is going to be open.
Что касается открытия других баз, я вам расскажу один случай, который мне пришлось в начале войны самому заняться этим вопросом.
And when it comes to other databases, I can tell you a story that I personally used to have at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and I had to do it myself.
После временной оккупации Херсона из Херсона выходили беженцы.
As far as Kherson was occupied, there were lots of refugees who were trying to leave the city.
Я лично получил звонок от одного беженца, который говорил, что за ним идет бывший прокурор, а русские в Гугле смотрели информацию всех и должностных лиц, прокуроров, судей или расстреливали, или не выпускали, брали в плен. И сам мне пришлось звонить министру финансов, министру цифровой политики, чтобы он закрыл все базы.
So I received a call from that kind of refugee myself. He called me and said that there is a prosecutor who is following him. And the point is that all Russian troops had an opportunity to check the information. They knew all the militaries, all prosecutors, all law enforcement agencies, employees who used to work in Kherson. So I had personally called to the Minister of Digitalization and asked him to close that data.
Поэтому вопрос очень важный, но, наверное, это должен быть очень важный вопрос обсуждения как и сфер безопасности, так и прозрачности должностных лиц. Очень сложный вопрос, на котором можно ответить и так, и так.
So the question is really great, but the main concern that I have that you can balance between security and transparency. So I do not have an answer yet. We can answer both ways.
Поверьте нам, что для нас сейчас самое главное выиграть войну.
Just believe me, the most important thing for us is to win the war.
Thank you so much, Izo. Thank you so much, Inga. I see already that most likely there'll be a follow-up. Yes, please, the lady over there. If you could briefly introduce yourself and then pose the question.
I'm Ana Gomes from TI Portugal, and my question is to the representative of EPPO. I'm glad that you mentioned this investigation on VAT that is going on. I hope this puts pressure on the finance ministers to finally approve the changes in VAT regulation that would prevent the carousel fraud that is involved. It's outrageous that for 4 years they have been asked to do that and they haven't, so I hope this will have this additional impact. But my question is, what about golden visas? We have a report by the European Commission from 2018 saying how this not only damages the financial interest of the European Union, but actually the network of organized crime that infiltrates. But we have now a development This is happening, for instance, in my country with the so-called changes to the nationality law to give back nationality to descendants of Sephardi people. And we know this has been used by oligarchs from Russia, like Abramovich, like Rapoport and others, to actually benefit from the European Union for protection. Is there the need for a national investigation to start so that EPPO will move, or will EPPO initiate that investigation based on what has already been published in countries like my own, where it's clear that not only the financial interests of the Union are at stake, but actually security and political crucial interests.
Thank you so much. Golden visas, the Sephardi descent, but let us wait a sec. Again, do you have more questions to Crystal and the EPPO? Yes, please go ahead, because we'll just collect a few and then it will be easier, for us to tackle them.
Good morning, my name is Ron Pop from TIU. I have a question both to EPPO and NABU.
Smart.
There were there were these ideas floating around that maybe Ukraine, in the framework of the reconstruction, should join EPPO. I wonder what you can say about this.
Great, so that's one more question. Anybody else? EPPO, NABU, yes, there's a question at the back. Let's take one more and maybe one more and then just go for it. Let us wait a second. Yeva is doing her best, but she can be just that quick.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Fatima Fatai, public prosecutor from North Macedonia. I've been a part of the former Special Prosecutor's Office in North Macedonia. My question to Crystal is, you mentioned you have a budget of 41 million euros, but you actually earned more, 5 times more, as you said. So my question is that the amount of, the money or goods that you've actually seized is a result of just, is that just a temporary seizing? Is just a result of something that is done in a pre-investigative or investigative procedure, or that is a result of a final court's decision? Because we can say that we are successful in something when there is going to be a final court's decision. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Crystal, please.
Yes, thank you.
So
thank
golden
you for
visas, Ukraine, and quantification.
Thank you for all the questions. First of all, to golden visas, legally speaking, EPPO's competence is really strictly limited to the protection of European Union's finances. So if these crimes, which are related to those so-called golden visas, are related to the EU budget, EU finances, then yes, of course we will investigate. Of course, I don't know about anything about a specific case, but let me put it this way, we are not afraid of anybody. So if there is a legal reason or legal grounds for us to initiate an investigation, we will do that. Next question about Ukraine. Ukraine has to do the first step first to become the member of the European Union, and then of course they're welcome to become a member of the EPPO also. To the third question, thank you also for raising this. Indeed, we are still at the very beginning of our operations, which means that when we talk about really measuring our work via court decisions and judgments, then of course we do have our first judgments already, and first actual judgments where we have confiscated a lot of money. But when talking about this, when talking about seized assets, it's still, most of these cases are indeed still in the investigative phase. And of course, it might happen that the court will acquit some of those persons, etc. But we are still continuing our work. And I think we can still use this as an indicator already. But of course, as a prosecutor, I can of course agree with you that that clearly the judge also has to have a final saying here in these cases. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Yes, you say here and then we go here. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Sanjay Modi. I'm an attorney based in New York. My question is for Patrick. I wanted to pick up on your comment about shifting resources to appropriate targets. There's been a lot of discussion here at this conference about the role of local enablers in facilitating international corruption. And I'm curious about how the staffing and budget of your office and of the Bureau generally has shifted to reflect that recognition, and how you think that might change in the next few years.
Thank you so much. Do you also have a question to Patrick?
Yeah, my question is
coincidence.
slightly related. My name's Franz Wild. I'm a journalist with the Bureau of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Sorry, the only other bureau in the house, hopefully. We're based in the UK. We're a non-profit journalism organisation. We focus on corruption. My question is primarily for Patrick and Alice. You know, in the wake of all these DPAs you've had, to what extent is there a real focus on individual prosecutions, so prosecution of individuals? And also, in follow-up to the previous question, you know, to what extent have your resources now shifted to kind of monitoring and enforcing sanctions violations on the new set of Russia-related sanctions? And to what extent are they kind of, I know there are some that are already in the public domain, but to the extent that they aren't, to what extent is that a kind of active affair?
Thank you so much. Do we have more questions to FBI or AFA? Great. Then, Patrick, would you like to start, and then Alice later join in? Yes.
Well, I guess I can answer actually with the answer I'm going to give is actually a combination of both the questions posed, and I'll use the example of the task force klepto capture, which was in response to the invasion of Ukraine, and what the initial targets were all, I would say, well-known oligarchs, and it was very public. We have shifted, though, going forward, to address enablers of oligarchs. That has become, I would say, a focus of that, but I would just add that that has always been a focus of our investigations, of going after whether it's lawyers, financiers, consultants who enable who are genuinely almost kind of integral in international corruption. That also goes to the professional money launderers. They are often, I would say, a forgotten target, when in reality, I would say high-level corruption and high-level crime overall involves money laundering, and very often not everyone has their own money launderer or their own department to launder money. What do? Well, there are lawyers, there are facilitators out there that assist in this, whether it's through bank accounts, cryptocurrency. Those have always been, but I would say that there's been an increased focus on those targets as, again, a more holistic way of addressing corruption rather than just targeting a certain individual, a certain company. In regards to sanctions evasion, that has become an integral part of what the FBI is doing. And I would say it's not just related to Russia and the invasion of Ukraine and the oligarchs associated. It has always been a part of the United States regulatory and law enforcement environment. I would say there is an increased appetite, one, to make sure that the appropriate individuals and I would say entities are sanctioned by the United States, as well as our partners, to push our partners to join the United States in sanctioning. That is done through a separate organization from the FBI. But in regards to sanctions evasion, the FBI will investigate sanctions evasion as a criminal case. Whether that be through moving funds by sanctioned individuals to family members, or various, which brings it back to money laundering. In regards to the monitoring of a company who may have had a DPA related to a corruption case, the FBI itself does not partake in the actual monitoring of any business entity or even actually an individual. But we do receive information when someone says, hey, they are violating their monitorship because there's ongoing criminal conduct, or they are they are certainly not, I would say, acting within the agreed upon framework. When we receive that information, we work with our Department of Justice partners who take the appropriate steps in regarding to the legal justification of what the next steps on that.
Patrick, thank you so much. Alice, is there anything you'd like to add?
It's a little bit hard to answer you because, as you know, I'm not a prosecutor. But the French DPA, the legal condition from the French DPA is that it's against a legal person. But it doesn't mean that you cannot prosecute individuals. It's just that you cannot deal a DPA. So the prosecutor have to organize 2 procedures, one DPA and the other one he may go to the court for the individuals. And of course sometimes this judicial review can have his own comprehension of the case. And once we had a judge that says that, because it's quite difficult, we also have a kind of DPA for natural person, but that's what we call plaider coupable. Yes, plaider argument. But there is a judicial review that doesn't exist with. Yes, sorry, but I'm not the good person to answer this. What I can say in my scope is that when there are reports on a company that show that the company fails to comply with an anti-corruption plan, then the law says that the CEO and the top manager is responsible for that. He could be responsible with the legal person, but there is this special obligation on the top management.
Thank you so much. I believe we have time for one more round of questions, if there are any. If not, just as fine. We have exactly the amount of time needed to do the silver lining thing, and perhaps take stock of our discussion, the questions I've heard, because I do think that it is already absolutely great that we are here in the process of rethinking our approach to corruption. I understand how difficult it can be because I also work with many colleagues from various law enforcement institutions, because you come from very large organizations, well-established organizations, with a lot of past and a lot of your hands now in the present. So it is very difficult not to live that self-fulfilling prophecy and actually pause, use an opportunity like this, and open up. It is not easy, right? So I'm very curious what you are taking away home after this 1 hour and a half these days here at the IECC. Is there one thing in particular which you would like to perhaps contemplate, build on, or even change now that you go back home or to your respective institutions? Perhaps there will be things that you'll just continue on, which is just as fine. But I'm curious, what would be that one main takeaway or message to the audience here? Anyone who wants to start can start. Žydrūnai, of course, please.
I have 2. Okay,
it's all right.
One.
I mean, you have 2 hats, so.
I think we should hear Edwardas, because we live in information environment, so we should be ready to work next year to work with double amount of information. This is very important. And another one, we like anti-corruption in community and investigators or heads of institutions. We should. We are in a different situation compared with police and etc. We should push our government to do one step more than they are ready to do. So we should go step by step toward transparency.
Thank you so much. Who wants to go next?
I guess I'll go next.
Patrick.
Real quick, I think that the value of this event, and especially I'm going to, in the context of COVID, of the kind of hopefully emerging from this, so we get at least close to what we would consider normal, is the ability for all parties to get face-to-face to meet. I find that to be good in 2 respects. One, Zoom meetings are great, but people are checking their email, people are checking their messages, and the kettle's going off in the background. Or when we actually get face-to-face, when we can have meetings, when we're all in the same place, I feel like that does 2 things. One, it provides a face. to go along with what my colleague said, trust. When you have trust of someone, one, you know the name of the person, you know the face of the person, but you've actually been able to sit down and talk with them. When you have information or a possible case or just a simple request, once the trust is actually established, it enables both everybody much better to just make a phone call, send an email. Obviously, we have proper channels, but I would say that that's one of the biggest things out of an event like this is that people meet each other and they begin trusting each other. They form a relationship, which is actually invaluable, especially in regards to international corruption.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Alice. Oh, Crystal.
Thank you. During yesterday's, I think it was plenary session, when one of the panelists, one of the gentlemen said that when you fight corruption, it fights back. So I think, or I'm quite sure that in the coming years, we're going to see more elaborated corruption schemes. Corruption is more intertwined into other crime, other organized crime, etc. But I can just maybe, I don't know, make a promise here on the stage on behalf of my colleagues that
on the record.
We are also going to keep fighting. So we're not going to give up, you know. And we're a new agency, new European Union body, and a lot of work ahead of us. But we still have this. How can I say, spark in the eye. We're not yet tired because we are so young. All of my colleagues are out of their comfort zone when they joined this new agency because we had to build it from the scratch, and we do see now that we have a huge work ahead of us. But and well, we're eager to do that work.
Constant assessment. Yes, Alice.
Yeah. By two last words, we say that it's really important to know each other, to understand each other, and also to have the high commitment of the top management and highest authority. Without that, it's very hard to go further.
It actually is very great. It's great that you're mentioning this, that the stone from the top, and the fact that it's important to acknowledge it time and again, is something which is key.
Yeah, it's the same for company, for public actor, for government. For
yes. Edward.
Thank you. It works. I would say to invest with this helicopter view, to understand phenomena, and of course with support of technologies. So I think that competent staff and technologies could bring difference.
Thank you. Giza?
Вот думал, что я беру из этого панела и из этого визита, возвращаясь назад. Наверное, для меня самое главное – это поддержка, которую каждый здесь присутствующий, каждый участник этой конференции, в первую очередь меня оказывает поддержку как гражданина Украины.
I have been thinking about what the outcome that I'm going to take with me from this panel, and I have understood that it's not only about the panel, but the conference in general, that everyone is supporting us and show its support as to those people who are citizens of Ukraine.
Как гражданин Украины, не имея значения, на какой должности, что я представляю, чем я занимаюсь в Украине.
And they show their support to me despite and just because I am a citizen of Ukraine, it doesn't matter what position I have.
Что касается профессионально, я очень рад, что здесь собравшиеся все, можно сказать, топ-менеджеры в своих органах, мы все договариваемся и знаем того, что борьба против коррупции очень важна. И доверие общества – это самый главный индикатор нашего успеха, я так думаю.
And all people here, all professionals, we agree on that, that corruption is worth fighting against, and that it is really important that civil society is supporting us, and it is really a big responsibility that we have.
Well, thank you. On this note, I would like to thank all of you. You were wonderful. I enjoyed our session tremendously. Thank you so much to the colleagues at the ICC for giving us this space. We almost fit. And of course, to the initiators of this discussion. I'm very happy that my colleagues at the Special Investigation Service at the European Partners Against Corruption Network thought of this topic, and we are here today discussing this. In the meantime, I wish you a great International Anti-Corruption Day. I'm sure we'll see each other in the hallways. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.